Well, welcome to the Microdesk webinar series. My name is Megan Fullagar. I'm the marketing manager here for Microdesk. Today's webinar is on, oh, what a long, strange trip it's been, implementing AutoCAD Civil 3D at MassDOT. So a little bit about Microdesk. We're an Autodesk Gold, Oracle, and Google partner. We provide technology training and consulting solutions for the AEC industry. We have 11 offices nationwide, and that includes 90 consulting specialists and software developers. Microdesk has been the technology consultants to the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, better known as MassDOT, since the 1990s, and they asked us to help adopt AutoCAD Civil 3D. AutoCAD Civil 3D software is the building information modeling solution for civil engineering, design, and documentation. In this webinar, learn what challenges we face and the lessons we learned when deploying new CAD standards. Hear how we use new and innovative solutions to deploy technology over 165 separate software installations affecting over 500 users. Presenting today's session, we have with us Microdesk Senior Consultant Rick Reed. Rick is a registered professional land surveyor in Massachusetts and a member of the Massachusetts Association of Land Surveyors and Civil Engineers. He's over 25 years of experience as a land surveyor with expertise in performing and directing surveys for property line, hydrographic, topographic, construction layout, GIS data collection, as well as performing sub-meter, decimeter, and sub-centimeter GPS surveys. Rick has been the lead technical consultant to MassDOT for the last 6 years. Just a few logistics before we begin. In order to minimize any background distractions, you are all on mute for the duration of the session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question area of the webinar toolbar to the right of your screen. Rick will address as many questions as he can at the end of the presentation. If we run out of time, we'll provide you with our contact information so you can follow up with us. And now I'll turn it over to Rick.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate everybody taking the time out of their busy day to attend this session. This particular session I actually performed back in Autodesk University this past year. Had a lot of great people attend it. There's a lot of great information that I'm going to go through today. And hopefully what you can do is walk away with both an understanding of what MassDOT has kind of gone through the changes that we've come up with over the past couple of years, as well as perhaps taking your own role in adopting Civil 3D, and also some of the more challenges just by implementing software. Well, question is where do we begin? I mean, ultimately, you know, MassDOT, formerly known as Mass Highway or the Massachusetts Department of Public Works, we certainly all recognize in Massachusetts we had the proverbial big dig, which really kind of pushed us into some new technologies probably a little bit earlier than we really were ready for, as evidenced by the running joke is the cost of the big dig. Basically, MassDOT, back in the 80s, they're much the same as most other DOTs. They had software that they used. Certainly, most of the computer systems out there were pretty prevalent. One of them that MassDOT originally started with was the McDonnell Douglas GDS MOS system. It's actually a pretty high-tech system, lots of followers. Unfortunately, it's quite expensive. Basically, a single seat cost about $3,500 back in the 80s. That equates to today's cost of about $12,500 per seat. So that's quite a bit of money. And also, the systems that it required to run on were quite expensive as well. And one of the other interesting aspects was we did have a few AutoCAD installs kind of mixed amongst the districts. Excuse me. They were kind of local. There was probably one, two, kind of a mix. And the problem basically with these two systems was they they really didn't have a seamless integration together. So it required a lot of digital conversion. Unless you were actually orchestrating your work in GDS MOS, pretty much you were going to have to go through a conversion process. As a result, a lot of the standards were kind of left to the local users at the district level. Nice thing about AutoCAD, it certainly could be installed on less expensive PC-based systems. That's certainly in the forefront of when PCs really started to take hold. And one big benefit that MassDOT had is we had a local firm, Sofdesk, which built a lot of handy add-ons like DTM, Kogo, and Earthworks, which are basically just add-ons to AutoCAD. And we actually found a lot of users actually taking advantage of that. Now, what we actually realized was the use of AutoCAD in the industry was actually growing quite a bit, partly due to Sofdesk's location to us here in New England. And as a result, it seemed like a lot of consultants were actually kind of adopting AutoCAD rather than deciding to spend $3,500 at that time on a seat of GDS MOS. And also, we actually had a couple of other issues. The installs. Now, we had ultimately 5 districts at that point under MassDOT, and the involvement of SneakerNet basically was pretty popular. Basically, if you wanted to install something, you had to run over and go drop the disk inside the computer in order to get it installed. Well, that went on for quite some time. And then ultimately in the 90s, there was a specific decision, AutoCAD is our choice. We still had standalone installs. Outlying districts really was still challenged by literally being so far removed from the main office here in Boston that ultimately controlled a lot of this. So there's really a lot of problems associated with that, obvious issues, and distance was only half of those. Coming in around 2000, we actually decided to migrate to Land Development Desktop, which is certainly shortly after Sofdesk's acquisition by Autodesk. At that point, we upgraded to a network version, which certainly helped a lot of things in regards to our installs and licensing compliance. And also, we switched over to a network deployment, which meant that we could actually have that single install readily available, pre-configured in order to get the product installed on users' desktops. Then we actually entered into a process. Ultimately, we started to tripping over things. Our number of software had gone well over 165 software installations presently. And as a result, it was getting longer to deploy software. It was actually taken us about 18 months in order to roll out new software. Basically, we did adopt image replication, even though we performed that new age function in those days. We're also challenged by a lot of the software really didn't play with others. Now, if anybody's ever installed one product and noticed that another product just all of a sudden stopped working, multiply that times 165. Pretty much anybody in the software world that actually got to play with everything. Common files were an issue. And also our updates, service packs were also virtually impossible to update immediately because of the idea that we had 5 outlying districts, including Boston, and as a result, unless we were there installing it, we wouldn't be able to easily deploy this. And then along came the Project Development Design Guide, which also added insult to injury at times because there were some conflicting data included in the design guide. Not a big deal because ultimately, both if you've worked with MassDOT in years past, some project managers are pretty good and would certainly work through a lot of this conflicting data. And the general consensus in the consultants was they really didn't like to work for MassDOT, but ultimately it was a necessary evil in some of those trying times. Now the knockout really is when we first deployed Civil 3D. We actually decided to install Civil 3D 2007 along with the Land Desktop Companion 2007, and we instituted training classes almost immediately. The challenges, we didn't have any standards other than the Project Development and Design Guide. Most of the users were very reluctant. Some flat out refused to use Civil 3D in their day-to-day work. Some of the issues that we had, workstations. Workstations were vastly in need of upgrades, and of course, getting back to the rollout, it took us 18 months to actually roll out this product, which, as most of us know, that pretty much in 2009 when we completed, we're already 2 versions behind. And ultimately, we consider that we failed. Nobody was using the product. So we actually, in 2010, we did a reset, and we actually started rethinking the whole process, back to the drawing board, as it were. Now, what we ended up doing is, during that time, basically 2008 to 2010, you might recall that MassDOT, formerly Mass Highway, went through that transition phase. The governor was nice enough to consolidate our departments, and as a result, MassDOT was formed. Also, one of those divisions formed was the Highway Administration. Now, it's a small but key core group inside of MassDOT that actually was decided to actually take the lead on this, rather than a particular highway design or geotech or bridge or one of the other sections actually taking the lead. And we actually thought about, you know what, we really should actually get input, both at the user level and also the department or section level. And as a result, we might be able to develop some new strategies in order to actually execute the subsequent rollout of Civil 3D. We had to do something in order to roll out all this software much more efficiently. So even though this particular webinar might be about Civil 3D, technically this whole presentation is about how we deployed 165 different software installations. And also we wanted to make it sure that we actually took care of our using our project info system, our internal system, far better, because we're certainly falling short. One thing about our input, some of you may have even seen or heard of SurveyMonkey. We actually orchestrated this. We asked questions such as, who's using this software? What software you're using, whether it's AutoCAD or MAP or Civil 3D or land development. And also we wanted to ask some other questions like, hey, if you had any wish in the world, what wish would that be? And we actually, what we got was, to be honest, we got honesty. I mean, ultimately, basically clear and straightforward honesty. What we found, how often do you currently use your CAD software? We found 68% of our users were using it better than 3 days a week. Most importantly, what we actually found was we asked the users, how long ago did you actually last get trained? What we found was really disturbing. We found that 60% of our users actually hadn't been trained in over 2 years, or 2 years or better, I should say. And the more disappointing fact was 1/3 of our workforce hadn't been trained in 4 years or worse. And as a result, it was no wonder why we got a lot of comments that probably were not exactly great. As I mentioned, we found how much people were using the product. We also found some really great wish lists. In particular, most users complained about computers, monitors. They wanted a training regimen. They wanted to use the latest software. They talked to consultants on a daily basis, and they felt really set aback by being stuck on older versions. And most of the users did feel that there was a need for some form of standardization and automation. They hear about it in the private sector. Why can't the public sector actually provide it? So we also, once that was completed, we also attacked the section level, and by that we really sat down with all the section heads and we performed an assessment. The assessment asked the proverbial question, what's working? or more importantly, what isn't working, what software was being used, and also asking them the same questions, do you have any wish lists? And also we actually did bring up with those section heads the wish list items that the users had brought up. Now, the funny thing is when you ask 500 users for their thoughts, you get 500 different opinions. We wanted to make sure that we empowered the sections. We wanted to divide responsibility. We want to also ask about other disciplines. Are you working well with them? Are you actually finding that information is easily transferred? Do you have any cross-discipline feedback? And by that, we actually did find that certain sections were working alongside each other, but ultimately they weren't really working well together. And some of the feedback we got, some were challenging, some were not so challenging. The interesting thing that we did, we got one statement that we kind of joked about originally, but we think about it. One project manager mentioned that he does a lot of AutoCAD work, but he could get away with AutoCAD Lite, which is kind of comical at first, but then we started thinking about it, and we really understood that, you know what, there was a couple of issues here. One, the project manager, A, didn't know the software's capability, so he wasn't trained enough. B, didn't have a process to actually help him implement that software. And the list goes on. So we kind of looked at this little statement as a call for help. Now, what we uncovered in the section level, as I mentioned before, they weren't working well together. It was common for sections to compete against one another. You say potato, I say potato, really a plethora of problems. And the disappointing fact is everybody accepted that workflow. And that was probably the most unheartening function. So when we gave the feedback, we gave them no restrictions. Just give us everything you can, recommendations, wish lists, you name it, and we developed a nice little assessment report. What we found was actually, with all this software, we really needed some help in addition. So what we actually had was a requirement of, we wanted to go Windows 7, 64-bit. We wanted to make sure that something could be easy to implement, also resolve some of our upgrade issues and the compliance issues from software to software and make them play nicer together. And we also wanted to deploy our service packs quicker as well. And we actually found 3 products. One, the Microsoft Application Virtualization, known formally as AppV. We found AppSense, and we also found the Citrix Provisioning Server. Now, AppV, in its simplest sense, was basically the idea of creating software installs that basically were in their own box. So we could install an application that wouldn't see other applications in order to break them, mostly. And as a result, it was almost like a seamless system of making everybody rigidly, all the software to play well together. AppSense was utilized to actually create physical virtual desktops. So think of this as roaming profiles. So what we end up doing is we created an image for the install and then ultimately install all 165 software applications onto it, but then we assign user-level based access privileges. So user A might be a Civil 3D and a traffic SignCAD user, but they would also have MS Office. User C might be utilizing only Vertus and StadPro, so we'd be able to turn on and shut off certain applications. And then the interesting thing is there were times when we had users cross into other sections, in which case we could quickly modify those users' access to product. And then the biggest can was certainly the Citrix Provisioning Server, which is ultimately that streaming single desktop image in order to both reduce the amount of storage necessary to install individual desktops, but also the ability to stream updates, And basically, we can actually stream updates just by a user just simply logging off and logging back in. Now, we didn't virtualize Civil 3D. That's one question that most people will ask when Citrix is involved. The virtualization of Civil 3D was left to installing it on the base image. Now, the challenges, as we mentioned before, there's a few others that, as a result of adopting new technology, it certainly emphasized other issues that might pop up. One of which was our infrastructure was pretty poor. We had to definitely increase our infrastructure to gigabit throughout all outlying districts, where many oftentimes we were in 10 megabit per second networks. And also, there was a little bit of trial and error with AutoCAD Civil 3D, only because of the registry. As we all know, Autodesk, or I should say AutoCAD products, have a tendency to dive into the registry, make some changes, and then even upon exit, the registry is always talking to the product. And as a result, there was a little bit of work up front in order to get past that. But the great thing is we've passed that about 3-4 months ago, and certainly things have been evening out. Now, 2012, our current status right now, we did make the official release of the CAD standard on January 2nd, 2012. There was a formal engineering directive which mandated the use of Civil 3D and our new CAD standard, released through the Directive E-12-001 on January 6, 2012. And we wanted to make sure that we also had a nice web location for that, and we have a specific location for our CAD standards. Things that we dived into, we emphasized new layers, we orchestrated new plot styles, we actually switched from a color-based system, which most users were familiar with, to a style-based system, and that was meant to ultimately make the sections and the departments work better together. So literally I can open up a survey file and plot it to design, and the survey information is automatically grayscale. And also we orchestrated some new line types in the mix as well, because we really found that everybody was kind of doing a mix of AutoCAD and custom company-wide line types that really weren't consistent. One of the other things that we changed was the submissions. Now, depending upon the section you were working with, depended on what you might submit. You might have submitted PDFs for the right-of-way department. You might have submitted paper documents to the highway design section. Pretty much there was a whole slew of different types of functions out there. And as a result, we chose the function of, well, if we're going to utilize project info better, we have to standardize our project structure. Let's make sure the data that we're receiving is in the format we want it. And also basically the three file formats, DWG, DWF, and PDF. Now, half the reason for this was ultimately because back in June of 2010, MassDOT launched what is now called Green Dot, which is basically a comprehensive responsibility, basically going green, paperless. So we wanted to have the option of being able to go paperless if the governor decided, you know what, everybody needs to go paperless, and we've already got the initiative, and we didn't want to be behind the 8 ball. So we actually orchestrated some use of these file formats. We also customized the interface for all MassDOT users. We actually orchestrated some new help menus. We got them some easy access to the CAD standard. We actually, and this is based upon the user input, where most users didn't have the common block libraries available to them. So we felt that it was appropriate to start creating new tool palettes and user interface to have access to all the tools. As a result, what we found is, the latest updates, we went through 2 AutoCAD Civil 3D product updates. Each one took less than an hour. Now, keeping in mind, we updated over 500 workstations in less than an hour. we went through 3 iterations of the CAD standard, which basically took us less than 10 minutes. By that, what I'm referring to is when we make a tweak to the drawing template or we added a line type, it took us less than 10 minutes to deploy it to all 500 users. All the users had to do was just log off and then log back in, and ultimately they got the new info. And we also wanted to make sure that we started doing quarterly rollout of these improvements. We're going to start beginning, we began in December. Well, technically the quarterly is what we hope to accomplish, but we're not sure exactly how much we will do. And we also want to orchestrate yearly rollout of software. Our opinion is no more will you find MassDOT 3 or 4 versions of software behind. We will always be within 6 months of the latest release. So in this particular calendar year, we're going to begin deploying Civil 3D 2014, most likely in late summer or early fall. And the funny thing is that's probably going to be done over an hour, whereas it used to take us 18 months, if you recall. One of the other aspects of this whole CAD standard and deployment, it does have effect on other departments. Now, what we've actually started having conversations with is the Massachusetts State Police Collision Accident Reconstruction section, which we've started orchestrating with, because they're going to actually start utilizing our data as well for their accident reconstruction. And the hope is that we'd have one continuing passing of data, both internally to MassDOT, but also with the State Police Department. So. And as to the future, who knows? To be continued. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Some of you might be familiar with the CAD standards, may have already seen some of the standards, and perhaps you've even orchestrated some emails to into the CAD standard team for review and such. We know we've actually received a couple of projects already. General feedback is, people are certainly guarded, but we've got a lot of great feedback from both our internal and also a lot of our consultants. So hopefully that will continue. I've listed here some of the components for some of the information that I've pointed out. The CAD Standards web page is available. It's a pretty long web page, but I think if you do a Google search on MassDOT CAD Standards, you'll find it under the Doing Business with Us section, and also the Green Dot implementation.
All right. Thanks, Rick. At this point, we'll be accepting any questions you may have, so you can just type them into the webinar toolbar under questions. All right, here's one for you, Rick. How would the average user take these 3 different products, AppB, AppSense, and Citrix, and implement them?
Well, that's a good question. I highly recommend you don't do it alone. Certainly in MassDOT's use of these 3 products, we definitely orchestrated through a couple of vendors. One certainly was Citrix. We utilize an organization called Virtual Dynamics, who's certainly very familiar and assisted us quite a bit on the customization, and also Microdesk. I mean, certainly it was a collaborative effort. Certainly MassDOT could never have done it alone. They certainly did the smart thing in engaging a lot of more knowledgeable people. Certainly there's a heck of a lot more people smarter than I am out there, and I'm thankful for it. So I'd certainly recommend definitely getting people like Microdesk, Virtual Dynamics, get them involved early in the process, because you could spend a lot of money really fast. And one of the nice things is we basically prohibited that by making sure we did certain smart changes. So.
All right, I have another one here for you, Rick. Has MassDOT moved away from AutoCAD text fonts like Roman to text type compatible with Revit and other BIM packages?
Presently, not at this time. Although we're always looking at interoperability. Presently, MassDOT doesn't have Revit installed. We are looking at that for perhaps a bridge, landscape design. We're definitely looking at the future because we definitely don't make any change without seeing how it affects not only all the other sections but also its interoperability. That's a great question because certainly that implies, well, if you're going to start working in a building information modeling world, you got to be able to play well with others, and we certainly want to make sure that the standard doesn't prohibit that.
Rick, how often is MassDOT choosing to update their standards?
Presently, our original role was quarterly, although we're guessing that this first year was probably the worst year only because we never had anything. So, we're currently under a third release, going to be released fairly soon. But we're going to hope to pass out information no greater than quarterly. Our gut tells us that it's probably going to be at least twice a year, maybe some midstream updates, because our intention is ultimately when we upgrade, we're also going to try to take advantage of all of the new stuff inside of the upcoming product. One of the biggest things, QTO. Certainly we want to get better at our quantity takeoffs. We want to definitely get better with our Revit interoperability with some of our other disciplines. So we're going to try to orchestrate changes fairly quick, but as in anything, sometimes it just takes longer to deploy some things.
All right, that's great. If you guys do come up with any other questions that you would like for us to kind of go over, feel free to email us at webinars@microdesk.com. All right, thank you, Rick. Again, if you have any questions or you'd like to learn more about this project or Microdesk consulting services and solutions in general, visit us at www.microdesk.com or give us a call. Also, be sure to check out our next webcast coming up on March 13th. That's going to be on pushing the boundaries of traditional walkthroughs. All right, again, thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks.
Thank you.